The assassin quietly planted a mine on the car, then floored the gas pedal and fled the scene. Meanwhile, George inside the vehicle was still laughing and fooling around, completely oblivious to the approaching danger. The mine had been activated and peril was imminent. Suddenly, a bee flew into the car. George frantically tried to shoo it away, but the agile bee drove him nearly to his breaking point. With the explosion countdown closing in, he yanked the steering wheel hard and made a sharp turn, pulling his BMW over to the roadside. With only 15 seconds left on the countdown, he was still battling the bee. Finally, the bee landed on the windshield and George seized his chance, ready to swat it dead with one blow. The assassin thought his plan had succeeded, but to his surprise, George emerged unscathed. Soon after, George got a new car, but the assassin didn't give up and continued targeting him. This time, he fired wildly, with one bullet hitting the gas tank, causing fuel to spray everywhere. George remained completely unaware. When he tried to shift gears, he got burned by the cigarette lighter and carelessly tossed it aside, which happened to ignite the gasoline on the ground. Flames instantly engulfed the assassin, who had no choice but to jump from the car to escape. When headquarters learned of another failed mission, they were furious and decided to send their most elite assassin to carry out the task. George had now arrived at a gas station to fill up, while the assassin was already lurking nearby. He revealed a large knife hidden in his sleeve, displaying the battle scars on it, and said confidently, "This target will be a piece of cake." George was chatting with the attendant, completely unaware of the approaching danger. The attendant noticed a hole in the car body, spat out his KFC, and casually patched it up. Meanwhile, George was using a water gun to wash his hair, completely off guard. The assassin crept closer, preparing to use a sedative. Once again, George miraculously escaped disaster. After learning that the assassination attempt had failed yet again, headquarters finally realized the situation was far more complicated than they had imagined. So they simply kidnapped George directly and arranged for round-the-clock surveillance. George remained completely bewildered, having no clue why anyone would want to harm him. In reality, George suffered from severe paranoid delusions, constantly suspecting that people around him meant him harm. Even if the trash outside his front door went missing, he could spin it into some elaborate conspiracy. To guard against unknown enemies, George would often crouch in the bushes late at night, keeping watch. Sure enough, that night, a suspicious large truck suddenly appeared before him, and the people who got out were actually wearing gas masks. They swept away all the trash from George's house. George immediately sensed something was wrong and hastily put on roller skates to chase after them. Through sheer determination, he tracked them all the way from New York to London. When the truck finally stopped at a waste processing facility, he quietly peeked out to observe. Despite watching the workers process the garbage, he remained suspicious, convinced that unknown secrets lurked behind it all. As George snooped around, he accidentally discovered an arms deal in progress. When the military personnel were showing weapons to the gang, George slipped into the transaction site. Because he looked so composed, both sides mistakenly assumed he was a representative sent by the other party, allowing him to move freely around the scene. However, the deal's ringleader, Paul, quickly noticed something odd. He observed George actually playing with tires and even breaking into dance on the spot. Paul was completely puzzled. But just as he was seeing off the buyers, George suddenly popped up asking if there was a KFC nearby. Though Paul didn't understand his intentions, he didn't dare make any rash moves, fearing George might be some important client. To keep the situation under control, he simply gave George a BMW sports car and secretly ordered his men to find a way to deal with this troublesome character. However, George managed to cleverly defuse every crisis, which finally led them to decide to kidnap him back to headquarters for interrogation. Learning he was in danger, George suddenly burst forth with incredible strength, actually breaking the heavy iron chains and knocking down 2 guards, successfully escaping from the tiger's den. That night, an assassin snuck into George's home attempting murder, but his arrow missed its target and hit a utility pole instead. His son became interested in the bow and arrow and tried to pull it out to keep as a collectible. Unexpectedly, the utility pole had been loosened by the impact and fell over, knocking out 2 assassins. Paul was absolutely livid and decided to take matters into his own hands. He snuck into George's house ahead of time to lie in ambush, planning to attack as soon as they returned. When George walked in and saw him, he was startled. Just as Paul was about to strike, an unexpected incident disrupted his plans.
Ha! Bet you're surprised to see me!
In the end, George reported the arms-dealing clues to the police, and with police cooperation, successfully rounded up the entire gang of criminals. This story teaches us that no matter what we encounter, keeping a smile is important, because people who love to laugh won't have too much bad luck.